I'm going to kick it off to Michael Animodi, and he will begin by introducing himself. Michael.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy to be here. Thank you, Lizette. Thank you, Elisa, for inviting me. Very honored to be here to share my experience. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Animodi. I'm 25 years old, born and raised in the borough of Staten Island. Right now, I'm in my last semester at Kingsborough College. I am graduating in June with my associates in education. And my love for and passion for education started back I'd say about 8 years ago when I was an after-school counselor at a school. And ever since then, the kids have had my heart. So my job now is to become the best version of myself so I can help the world as much as possible. And I'm gonna pass it on to Miss Samantha.
Thank you, Michael. And my name is Samantha. I'm also very honored to be here amongst my fellow colleagues and panelists. I'm a public school teacher at Castlebridge School. I teach 2nd and 3rd grade. Castlebridge is a public, inclusive, progressive, dual language school in Washington Heights. I also teach early childhood courses at BMCC, and I also teach at City College. I focus a lot on educational equality for children of color, and just always focusing on being able to have equality for all, especially the inclusivity of all my students. I was born and raised in Harlem, and went to BMCC, and I also went to City College, and I also am a Bank Street graduate. And I went to Bank Street for early childhood, dual language, special ed, general ed, and then I returned to get a degree in leadership for educational change. And I'm gonna turn it over to Ashley.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ashley Garcia. I'm very excited to be here, also a little nervous, but you guys are making me feel beyond comfortable. Thank you for having me. I'm a 31-year-old single mother to a 10-year-old boy. I was born in upstate New York, raised in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Woo! I've been in the educational fields for 6 years. Surprisingly, growing up, I did not want to be a teacher. That was not something that I was like, yeah, let's teach. No, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be a vet. But then having my son and finding out complications that he had and him having an IEP, I wanted to learn more. I wanted to figure out, like, was it my fault? Or was there something that I could have done? Or is this just something that happens and something that does occur with some children? So yeah, I decided let's do this. I can learn better and I can help him, and I can also help children like him, and also, support families that felt bad like me, like support parents that would like, maybe it was my fault that this happens, and telling them my story actually helped them out. So here I am, and I'm in my last semester at BMCC, really excited. And yeah, I can't wait to graduate. And I'm gonna pass it on to Ivana.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ivana. Yes. I'm a graduate of the Urban Ed program. I'm a mom of 3 bilingual children. I'm from Argentina. I'm also bilingual and emerging bilingual. I worked at CUNY NICEF, the CUNY Initiative for Emerging Bilinguals, for a long time. I'm one of the former directors, and now I'm a professor at Kingsborough Community College. And this is my 2nd year, and I can't tell how much I love it. I think some of you know me from other places and have heard me rave about how much I love my students and my colleagues, and I found a new home. And now I'm going to pass it on to Kirsten.
Thanks, Ivana. So hi, everyone. So you'll see my official formal bio in the chat. So I'm just going to get right down to the informal. So Ashley, I am also nervous. that never ends. I want to say, I want to highlight from my bio that I'm a proud mother scholar, mama scholar. And one of the things I really loved about the Urban Ed program, so I'm a graduate of the Urban Ed program and I now teach at BMCC, was that there is a really strong community of parents who are juggling working and being in school and being a parent. And I think this must have been on my mind because I had an anxiety dream last night that we had to do this panel from the playground, and that we were all like chasing our kids around and also trying to like hold the cameras up so that the Zoom was going to work, and it was totally chaotic. Yeah, I started the program when my oldest was 1. And I submitted my last paper for Ophelia's class the day before my youngest was born. The other thing I want to just highlight is my commitment to community colleges. The reason I got my doctorate at the grad center was so that I could work in a community college or a place like it. And the reason is, you know, we all know the statistics, 80% of teachers look like me, they're white women. New York City is a little bit better. But I wanted to work in a place, I wanted to devote my career to supporting future teachers getting into the field who more reflect the cultural and linguistic diversity of the kids in our classrooms. And now that I'm at BMCC, my big commitment is also making sure that we're hiring more faculty and supporting more faculty of color. So I do want to just put in a plug too there's an event that's been hosted by Bronx Community College tomorrow. I'll put a link in the chat on focusing on the experiences of Black women faculty at CUNY. And I don't know anything about the organizers, but I'm signed up for it just to sort of amplify the work that we still need to do, because I think at BMCC we're doing a good job, but we can continue to grow and do better. And I'm really honored to have some of BMCC colleagues here with us tonight. So thank you. So I'm going to segue into, we brought our community college hustle and we prepared all our questions in advance because we're used to having to come up with stuff from the ground up. So we're just going to take turns asking each other questions. And the first question is a question that we have for Ashley and Michael to answer. And it's asking to share an example of a time when you had the opportunity to teach your colleagues or your professors at your two-year college and share your knowledge with your peers or with your professors. So I don't know which of you wants to go first, but just jump in.
Ladies first.
Mike, I was hoping that you went first. But I'll go. A time where I had the opportunity to teach and share my knowledge. Okay, so in BMCC, I had Kirsten and Samantha as my professors, and every time before class started, before we did anything, they always said, "What happens?" Because they knew that most of us, we were either teachers, assistants, whatever, in the classroom. So every day, of course, I had some type of story, and I never worked with children who experienced trauma. And I've never worked with children who had autism or whatever it was. I never worked with children like that. So I would come to class and I'm like, Kirsten or Samantha, this is what's going on. So I would come to class and I would tell them about one child in particular that would just hit all the children and then just have these outbursts. And everyone in the class was like, what do you do? Or like, are you frustrated? How do you come to class every day? Well, work every day and not get frustrated? And I'm like, no, I get frustrated. But when you're in the classroom, you have to learn how to work as a team. And if in my classroom, there was the teacher, the lead teacher, the assistant, I was one, and another assistant. And what we will do is we'll do a hand signal, like instead of saying, "Oh my God, I need help," because you can't let the children know that you're frustrated because they feed off of it. Hand signal, we'll literally tag in and like, I need a 5-minute break, step out, collect yourself. And they're like, you really do that? Even my classmates, actually, you really do that? Yes, because sometimes you need a timeout too. Like just like how they say timeout, I need a timeout where I need to take myself away from there, because if I'm sitting there and I'm dealing with the same child constantly for the next 20 minutes, I'm gonna get burned out. And then that child's gonna see that I'm burned out. And that's not good. And then all the children, they're gonna feed off of my burnt out energy. So to keep the energy flowing and going, let me take a step back. Then I jump right back in. There you go. Mike, you go.
All right. I have two examples. One being Miss Ivana here is my professor for education, and my first semester in the major, she was the professor. It was also her first time teaching the class too. So there was we kind of bonded with that, being that was both our first time. But I remember she used to make us do group work a lot. And I had to tell her, like, Professor, I don't like group work. Like, I know how important it is. I know, like, the social skills, we need all of that. But I personally do not like group work. And I think she gave us more group work after I told her that. But there was this project that we had to do, and the guy I had to research was Jerome Bruner. So I had to do that with a few other classmates, and I enjoyed it. I never had a problem standing up in front of people and talking and giving them, whatever kind of soliloquy I need to give them. So I enjoyed the research. I enjoyed expanding on his theory, his scaffolding theory, and things like that. So that was just one example for her class. And another class, my psychology, I also did a presentation on parental involvement in children's lives. That one hit home for me because both of my parents were very involved in my education, and the two other people that I were with also had different perspectives. So it was kind of good working with each other, seeing different perspectives, but also sharing how much of an effect having both of my parents in my life was, how much it impacted me and in my education now, because now I can't do anything without hearing my mom in the back of my head, talking that talk, or if I'm making a mistake, you get a little tap in the back of your head and put you back on track. So, it's always good to share some of my childhood education, my childhood tactics with classmates and professors. I have a question, and this question is for Miss Ivana, Miss Kirsten, and Miss Samantha. Can you share an example of a time when you had the opportunity to learn from your students as a professor at a community college? Ivana, I'm gonna pick on you first. Let me see what you have to share with us.
Okay, so I feel like I learn all the time, which I know it seems like a stereotype, like to say that, but I actually feel like every class I enter with some ideas and I come out with a very different idea. But because I'm working in the next class for this semester that I'm also teaching for the first time, I'm doing two new things that I learned from my students last semester. So one is based on a book that one of my students share. Just like Ashley, my students share things that, especially the ones that are in the classroom, things that they're doing with their students. And they were talking about, she was talking about reading Ghost Boys with a group of fourth grade students. And it's a book about police brutality and police killing of a Black boy, and talking about how her students reacted and how she helped facilitate this discussion. So she inspired me to now use that particular book, and I'm going back to her journal when she talked about thinking about, oh, this is what she shared and this is what I'm going to do. And the second thing I was thinking is I asked for feedback at the end of the semester, and one of my students told me, I had all these videos because we all had to teach field work with videos, and they called me on the fact that I had never put any explanation of how or why I chose those things. And I was like, I do all these other things, and how could I not have thought of that? And I was so thankful for her honesty at the end of the semester, because I said, please tell me what I could do better. So now I'm preparing all those things before my next semester. So I'm going to pass it on to Samantha.
Hi. So one of the things I missed in my intro was saying that, like Ivana said, she's a bilingual and a mom. I forgot to say that I'm a mom. My oldest is going to be 23 in March. My middle son's going to be 21 in like 2 days. And my youngest is going to be 18 in June. And they're all boys, and it's been a little bit of a ride. And also, growing up bilingual, I didn't learn English till I was like 8 years old. So I bring all those experiences with me. when I came to BMCC as a student, but then I came back to BMCC as a teacher. So that for me was like, oh my God, like I'm back and I'm like with my people. And I was really successful. And I think because when I did get there, they felt like the students felt a connection to me because I looked like them. I shared a lot of their experiences. So I always say, hey, I was a young mom, or I speak Spanish, or I grew up only speaking Spanish. And when I met Ashley, and Ashley already mentioned that I was her teacher, so I can say she's one of my students. When I met Ashley, and I know that I talk often about my children, especially my oldest one, and I talk a lot about the things I went through with him when he was growing up. There was speech therapy involved, there was occupational therapy involved, there was physical therapy involved. And I talked a lot about him, and then I realized that every class I talked a lot about my kids. And then I just said, this is not getting through to anybody because it's my experience about my kids. This is just, I had to let the students talk and I had to let them share. I remember one time specifically when I had asked Ashley to share, it was a makeup thing, right, Ash? It was a makeup thing she had to do. And she talked about her experience with her son. Her son receives physical therapy, right? Occupational therapy. I remember Ashley explaining that her son didn't crawl like a normal baby would crawl, or like you would expect a baby to crawl. Her son scooted. And when Ashley spoke about this, she get really sentimental, or sometimes it would be sentimental times, and sometimes it's happening. Sometimes it would be times where she was just talk about it to share her experiences. And I realized the impact that Ashley made on everyone else. And I realized that having the students in my class share their own experience rather than me just sharing, hey, my kid did occupational therapy, this is what it was about. My kid did speech therapy, and this is what it was about. But having students with children, or having students who've already experienced that work with children who had special needs, was a bigger impact than what I could have done as a teacher. And for me, like Ivana said, she's had many learning experiences from her students. I've had many. But that's one that had really stuck to me because it became a really emotional night for us that night, right before COVID hit, but it was special. And I'll send it to Kirsten after this one.
Yeah. So hearing Ivana and Samantha respond, I'm like, oh yeah, I should have talked about this. And there's so many ways that we try to really make sure that we're drawing on the expertise that our students bring. I mean, so we're teaching early childhood, or we're teaching education, and all of our students have experience either themselves in early childhood or with family. So we tap into their brilliance and their knowledge as often as possible. So I always have like expert panels on, I don't have an experience of being a bilingual learner, but I have a lot of students who do have that. I don't have experience migrating to this country, but a lot of my students do. So when they can share their expertise, that always works better. And one thing that I thought of was I was teaching one of our early childhood curriculum methods classes, and we want to emphasize the importance of play in that class. And so we set it up so at the beginning of class, a couple students each week share a recollection of play from their own childhood. And this is something I draw on from the work in descriptive inquiry, which some of you know of, I can talk about more later. But then we gather this collection of stories, right? And our students have played in all the places that they grew up as children, and they would start making connections like, oh, I used to play that game, but I played it with rocks instead of shells, right? Or marbles instead of, right? And then at the end of that collection of stories, we can then collectively come up with a definition of what play is and how it supports children's growth and learning. And that's a lot more interesting than me getting up with another PowerPoint and going through point by point why play is developmentally appropriate and culturally sustaining, right? Because we co-create that understanding together. So I'm learning from my students every day, and I recognize, and I'm very humbled about the fact that my knowledge is very partial always. And if I'm not tapping into my students' knowledge, I'm doing a disservice to myself and certainly to them. So I'm going to pass it off to Ivana to ask the next question. Oh, Ivana, you're muted.
All right. The next question is for Mike and Ashley. And you both, you both have work and with children, and Mike is still working with children. And so what we want to know is, what connections do you see between your college work and the education that you're getting? And also, what are some of the disconnections too, the things that are not there? And we want to hear from you. What are some of the things that we need to know as teacher educators and think about to prep our students better?
Ashley, do you want me to take this one first? All right. So some connections I can make is that, so now I'm currently a teacher's assistant at a charter school here in Staten Island. I teach the 3rd grade. And one thing that I can connect to that education and my place of work is, recently, like towards the end of the semester, I learned about backwards design. And as I was in a meeting with the staff members, and they were trying to figure out other ways to keep the students involved. And so I had brought it up. I was like, instead of us, constantly throwing all this curriculum at them, how about we just talk to them and ask them what they would like to learn about, and, see if we get any feedback from that. Feedback was phenomenal. We had kids raising their hands, unmuting left and right, trying to share in the chat, trying to share ideas about, whatever it was that we were talking about. And then my coworkers would text me on the side, like, yo, good idea, Mr. Anamodi, this, that, and the other. I'm like, all right. And I had to let my professor know that, backwards design is one of my favorite things that I've learned. And I'm pretty sure when I become a teacher that that's going to be the way I run my classroom. Although, it's kind of hard, giving the kids the freedom with the way New York State is and how we have to run our curriculum. But, I'll try my very best to definitely run it as a backwards design. Let them run the classroom, and then I'm going to be there just to steer them. In terms of what teachers can do better to prep student teachers, as far as I know, I haven't been too exposed to the field yet. I was just getting into it before COVID hit, but with my experience this year so far, I don't feel like I've been deprived of anything. Ivana has done a wonderful job with the 2 classes that I've had with her. I'm taking the 3rd one this semester, so I hope she's ready. But all I can say is that, just keep an open mind. Like, education keeps changing. The way kids are being taught keeps changing. So if the way they're being taught keeps changing, then I guess the way that we're being taught needs to change, so we can adapt to them and teach them to the best of our abilities. Your turn, Ash.
Okay, so a connection that I see between my college coursework and work. So before COVID happened, I was actually an assistant teacher at Education Alliance, located in the Lower East Side, close to Chinatown. So I remember in one of my ECE classes, I don't know if it was with Samantha. It was, oh, sorry, my dog. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
Don't worry at all.
Okay, as you guys can hear me over her, it's fine. So we would talk about community and diversity. So I would think, okay, how am I supposed to show diversity in my classroom with my students? So I worked in the Lower East Side. We had African-American students, we had white students, Asian students, all different types of students. So what I did was I made a family tree. I took pictures of the students with whatever family member that they had, whether it was an uncle. It didn't necessarily have to be mommy, daddy, because not everyone has a mom and dad. Someone has a grandma, someone has an auntie, titi, a yaya, a didi, whatever it was. And when they would come into the classroom, they would be like, oh, wow, look, oh my God, Osiris, your mommy's dark skin like me. Oh, wow, Bob, your mom looks just like me. Penelope, your daddy's hair is long like mine. They saw the difference, but then they also saw the similarities. And that also gave them a sense of community. Then the other question about prepping. Honestly, before I started school, I was already in the field because of my son, I would always volunteer in his classroom because I was one of those hands-on, I need to be there all day, every day mom. Probably annoyed, but hey, I was there. But honestly, I really feel like Samantha and Kirsten and the other ECE educators at BMCC, I really wholeheartedly feel like they prepped me enough with everything. Like even where we had our little internships and we were able to go to different places, that helped a lot. That gave us hands-on work as opposed to just telling us, here, read this, here, do this paper, here, watch this video. It was, no, you're in a classroom. This is how it's going to be done here. You can actually physically be in the classroom. That also helps a lot. And now it's my turn to ask a question. All right, so my question is to Samantha. What connections do you see between your classroom practice at Castle Bridge and at BMCC and at City College?
Oh, Samantha, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, it wasn't letting me unmute myself. That's what I was trying to say. Thank you, Ashley. So I've been working with the younger crowd for a long time. I've been at Castlebridge 8 years. Before that, I was at Children's Aid Society for 10 years. I worked with like the 3-year-olds and their grown-ups. And of course, I'm in a public school. It's still working with 3-year-olds and their grown-ups. Well, not 3-year-olds, 8-year-olds, sorry. 7, 8, 6, 7, 8-year-olds and their grown-ups. I've had a lot more experience working with the younger crowd, but you know, when I got to BMCC as an adjunct, I felt like, oh, I'm working with grown-ups. So this is gonna be so much different than it is working with the younger ones. And it is, right? Because the younger crowd and the older crowd are very, very different. But when I did get there, I realized that as a teacher to 2nd and 3rd graders, younger children can't really do much if they're not okay from here, right? And if they're not okay from here, they can't be okay from here. So it's the same with grown-ups. It's the same with 18, 17, 16, whatever, you know, with me, 40-plus-year-old person. If I'm not okay up here, I won't be okay up here. And I just realized that with my college students at the beginning, I was just like, okay, it's just, I'm facilitating, and if they don't do the work, then that's it, right? But then I was just like, no, this is not how it works. I've got to be able to communicate. I've got to be able to connect with them, and I got to be able to have a relationship with them. And that's what I went for. I went for community. I went for communication, and I went straight for that. I always asked them to just let me know. I just always asked them to let me know what was happening, and make sure that if we communicate, we're all good. And besides that, it's going through different things. Just like my younger students are going through different things, so you have to accommodate for that. So you accommodate and you're differentiate for everyone and their different needs. That's one of the things I learned working with younger ones and the older ones, and made that connection with both.
Just wanted to quickly let panelists know we are moving into our 3rd and final 10-minute round.
Thank you, Lisette. I think after this, Mike, it's you.
Yes, I have a question for Miss Ivana and Miss Kirsten. So how did the urban education program prepare you both to be a community college professor? Miss Kirsten, I'm gonna go on you to start.
Okay. So, I mean, for those who know the Urban Ed program, I think one of the things that really drew me to it was the social justice commitment and work. Actually, Ivana is the reason that I applied to the Urban Ed program. We both had our babies at the same, like 3 weeks apart. And we went out for our first like moms out for a beer after a few months. And I was like, what are you doing next year? She's like, oh, I'm going to this doctoral program. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll go to that too. And so I said, oh, no, first I said, tell me a little bit about the Urban Ed program. She told me all these great things about it. And then I applied. So the focus on equity, the focus on being, on radical thought was really really, really appealing. I also really like that so many of our colleagues in the urban ed program were working in the field. So they weren't people who just went straight from undergrad to grad to doctoral studies. They were all teachers, like we were. And so I really appreciated that. I would also say that, I had the opportunity to teach. They had a fellowship program where I could teach at one of the CUNY colleges while getting my PhD, and I would pay my tuition. And I also had health care for my whole family. So that was really great. But I will say, and this is definitely not, wholly across the urban ed program, but I did encounter in some places, some people through CUNY and through the urban ed program who had a little bit of an elitism around my desire to work in a community college. I think the urban ed program does an excellent job preparing researchers. And at least at the time, and now I graduated in 2013. So I don't know, I'm watching Wendy taking notes. I'm sure it's different now, but there's not as much of a focus on teaching. And when you're working in a community college, it's all about the teaching, right? And I experienced this when I came back. I was invited back for like an alumni talk night. And the person who introduced me said, oh, this is Kirsten. She teaches at BMCC. Because she has a family and her kids are in school and she didn't want to have to leave the New York area. And I was like, no, that's not why I'm at BMCC. I'm at BMCC because this is where I want to be. It's not, I'm settling. It's not, I couldn't get a job at a more elite institution. And so the next year when I was invited back again, I was sort of shocked to be introduced that way. And the next year I was invited back again and I was ready to hear me introduced that way. And so I had an answer this time. And I said, no, I'm at BMCC for these reasons, the things I said before. But I do think that there are some of our colleagues in higher ed, whether they're in urban ed or not, do view community colleges and community college students through a deficit lens, which I hope, it was the reason that we wanted to come do this panel, because I hope, and I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but I hope what you're taking away from this is that work in community college is the most powerful, fulfilling work that you can do, that I can do. And that's why I wanted to, come here and talk to you all. And so happy, I just want to shout out Jen and Jillian, my colleagues from BMCC, and probably some other people who I'm not seeing on the screen. Community college shows up. We show up for each other, and urban ed shows up, and urban ed shows up for each other. But every once in a while, I've had to really make sure that I'm highlighting that this is not, I'm not settling. This is my dream job, basically. So I'll turn it over to Ivana.
I feel like I want to say ditto. So some of the things, so I share a lot of the same ideas that Kirsten just shared. Some of what drew me to urban education was also their emphasis in social justice. And I also love that they looked at education, not just in terms of K through 12, but also all the different ways that we are educators, people that work in museum education, people that work in after school education, people who work in nonprofits. So there's a lot of different ways that we are educators in different settings. And that was important. I learned, things that I had never even considered before coming to urban ed. So I love learning from all the students that were there, and then that was connected to some of the theory that was part of some of my classes. I also came with Kirsten many years ago. So we're cohort 6, if you want to date us. So it was a very different place than it is now when we came in. And it has evolved in an amazing way. I think things have changed in ways that I couldn't have dreamed of. I wish I was starting now. But I echo the idea that while there's a lot of, and I think this is true for a lot of PhD programs in education, there's a lot of emphasis on research and very little thinking, or there was at least, about pedagogy, and pedagogy in terms of being in a college. We're all, not all, but a lot of us are preparing to be teachers, and we're preparing to be teachers at the college level. So when I'm teaching my own classes, I often, at the end or at some point, I ask my students, why did I do this? Because all of the choices that I made during a class are pedagogical choices, and I do it for a reason. And I didn't have that with many of the faculty at Urban Ed, because a lot of people are not focusing on having of the fact that they're thinking about their teachings in terms of modeling certain kind of pedagogy in the classroom. I know that has changed because I've heard things that Gladys tells me and makes me really envy her for Gladys is somewhere here, and some of the newer students said, make me envy the classes that they're taking. But and I changed as I left, but I think that's something to think about, that there's a certain model of academia and how people think that you should be teaching, which you would be eaten alive if you were taught like I taught high school. You couldn't do that, because that's not, no one would learn anything. And so we have to think about our pedagogical practices with every age group, and that's something that I think needs to be emphasized in any PhD program, in order to really prepare people that are going to go back and do the same thing, and particularly one that's preparing future teachers. And I have to say, just like Kirsten, I really do love, and part of my reasoning for doing this is to encourage more people to come and teach with us in the different community collegeships, because I do feel like it's my dream job too. And there's one last question, which I'm going to pass it on to Samantha.
Thank you, Ivana. So this question is for Ashley and Michael. How well has your community college prepared you for your work in the field of education, and where do you want to go next after?
Okay, Mike, you're giving me the face. I'll go. Like I said before in the last question, I really feel like BMCC really prepared me. Yesterday they spoke about the theorists Montessori and Eric Erikson, and they spoke about how we're supposed to plan our classrooms and the layout. But like, I really feel like, and I keep saying Samantha and Kirsten, not because they're here, but because I learned the most from them. Like, I was so engaged. I sat in the same spot. I sat in the front of the class all the time. Samantha knows this. But they got down and dirty. Like, listen, this is how you engage your parents. This is how you do family engagements. This is how you get to a parent who's bilingual. If you can't speak the language, this is what you do. Like, they really got down and dirty. They told us their experiences. Oh, a child pulled my hair. A child got hurt. They told you, they didn't make it into rainbows, unicorns, and dandelions in the fields. They told you, listen, a kid's gonna get hurt. This is what you're gonna have to do. You have to fill out these paperwork. They told you everything. And I really took that with me. I took every conversation that I had with Samantha and the ones that I've had with Kirsten, and also the ones that I've had with my peers. I took that and I continue to take them with me wherever I go. And now, when I graduate, it's either Hunter or City. Everyone at BMCC says, Hunter, you never know. But I just have a really strong feeling about City College. So just might be City College, guys. Mike, your turn.
Thank you, Ashley. I want to say I have been prepared, but I feel like due to COVID stealing a year away from me, I could have been a little more prepared, but that doesn't take away from the fact of what I learned already. Even through this virtual learning, like I was still in class and taking what I was learning in class and directly going right back to work. I would log out of work at 10 o'clock and go to Miss Ivana's class from 11 to 10 and go right back to work and take everything I just learned from her and see if I could apply it right there, right away. So I was definitely prepared. And like Ashley said, all the theorists and all their theories and stuff on how to control your classroom was great and all, but it comes down to the people you communicated with. How did they affect your life? How did what they taught you, how did that resonate with you? And how are you gonna, take that and, put it on someone else? How are you gonna resonate the same feelings to your students? So I think in that aspect, Kingsborough had definitely prepared me. I wish I was in the classroom for this last semester, but it works out. So I'm definitely prepared. I'm transferring to Brooklyn College after. They have a dual program, so I'm going to be doing special ed and regular education and finishing up from there in 2 years, hopefully sooner. What's that?
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you all so much for really sharing your experiences. And as we're waiting for, I'm going to give people another minute or two to type in a question in the chat if they have it. But as someone who was a teacher educator and hopes to go back into being a teacher educator, one of my biggest, the saddest things that I've always carried with me is how we don't tap into this potential that we have in our community colleges for our future teaching workforce. There are all these grow your own programs being started up in New York City, and the community colleges tend to get overlooked for our teachers. And it's been something that I've been trying to fight for a long time, and I've been trying to get the message out. Like, you want to grow your own? Let's go to our community colleges. Like, we have so much talent there, and they want to stay in New York City. They're invested in New York City. So you all just really, this conversation really showed that both the investment from the teaching side, the teaching staff, and the investment from the students, and just the co-construction of knowledge, the respect for each other, and the investment in each other has been really beautiful to see. So I think I'm seeing some questions here. I'm gonna go ahead and ask the one from Ana Rodriguez. This is for @Michael and @Ashley. Learning from your professors, what's one thing from your experience with them you will take with you on your journey as teachers?
So one thing that I would take with me is both Samantha and Kirsten's compassion. Oh my God, I'm super emotional when I talk about stuff. Like, don't mind me. I start to cry and stuff. But I remember during my previous semester, I had to interview a professor, and I interviewed Samantha. And just listening to her and hearing how she was like, Ashley, I can't physically connect to my children when I'm doing Zoom. What am I supposed to do? I can't do this. My children can't learn this way. And I'm like, she's really stuck on why she can't physically be there. And I felt the same way. Like, I can't learn not being in the classroom, and I can't teach not being in the classroom, but she made it happen because she made it happen for me. Sorry. And I want to be the same way that Samantha and Kirsten are. I have to make it happen for my students. I have to make it happen for the students that live in the low income communities like me. I have to make it happen. So I'm definitely taking that determination and that compassion with me, definitely.
I would say for me, taking away from Ivana is that it's very humble and teachable. So I know throughout my entire life, I know my parents have always told me to be teachable. I love the game of basketball, so I always told to be coachable. You know, you never know who you can learn from. You never know what kind of information someone can share with you that'll, better yourself. So that's definitely something not only as an educator I'll take on, but that's something just for life itself. Be teachable. You never know, even if it's from a little third grader, you never know what kind of information they can give you that you could use to either better yourself or, better the next person. So that's definitely one thing I've taken from her, and I want to make sure to continue on with that.
Yes, thank you both for your wonderful answers. We have another question in the chat, and it is from Jimmy Cruz. He says, I believe we learn so much in the classes we take and in the experiences in the field. Has this pandemic, remote teaching, hybrid teaching also helped develop you as an educator, as a student? And it's for anyone on the panel.
I can start with one just real quick thing. Like I was joking earlier that I never wanted to teach online, and I still feel that way. I can't wait to get back to the classroom. But I would say just sort of living through this collective trauma together and teaching and learning in the midst of the collective trauma, it's underscored for me that having a race conscious, trauma sensitive practice is not optional. Period, end of story. So like I'm going to tell a story about Ashley that's going to make me cry. I remember teaching the day after in the fall, the day after we got the news about Breonna Taylor's killers not facing facing any punishment. And I had already knew going into the class, we would start every class with a mindfulness activity and a sort of restorative justice kind of circle question. And so we started first, and I said, we'll go around, say one word about how you're feeling. And Ashley's word was angry. And I was like, yes. And so then I said, the next, we're a class of women of color, except for myself. We're going to spend the next 20 minutes, the first 20 minutes of class talking about the news that we just got. If this is a lot for you and you could use that 20 minutes to heal yourself in other ways, log off and log back on in 20 minutes. But everybody stayed on, and we just went around and shared sort of where we were at and how we think about the work that needs to be done in the context of our work as early childhood educators. And it was just, again, it's just not optional, right? To attend to our collective need to heal from everything. So, and I guess my learning has been that can even happen through this like bizarre disembodied experience of Zoom. There are ways to do it.
I would say I also, having to do the shifts, of course, it was hard, but there's something, and it's very hard not to focus on how much we miss that in-person interaction, but entering each other's spaces and meeting sometimes my students' kids because they're popping into the screen and having them. I think it was my first day of this last semester. I don't know if it was in your class or my other class. My daughter came in crying in the middle of class because she said her daddy was an idiot and didn't know how to help her with Zoom, and I was very embarrassed. But then it also brought the humanity into the Zoom, right? It was the first day of class. I was saying hello, I'm introducing, and said, and this is going to happen to me and to you too. So so there is a kind of connection. I mean, surprisingly enough, these moments create a different connection that we would have had in a classroom that is a little bit more isolated from our homes. And so I think that has been the positive of it. There are a lot of things that I feel like I obviously want to model that are not able to do because we're in Zoom, but bring in certain kind of humanity that because we're all in the same boat and sharing the same challenges, and then also sharing the same space in some ways made a difference.
Are there any last thoughts? That'll be our final question before we close out.
I'd just like to say that this whole online thing definitely made me a better student, as it sharpened my technology skills, because now I can work Google Slides, Google Docs, and Google Sheets like the back of my hand. So that's definitely a testament to this online stuff. But other than that, we all miss the interaction with our students. There's nothing like giving your student a high five or a fist pound after a job well done or after a good day. But we got to take the best of what we can. So that's the best I've been taking. Still learning, still going on as a student, as an educator. So learning something new every day.
I'd like to say that the people on this panel have inspired me. The people on this panel I met recently, some of the people on this panel, some people on this panel I've known a long time, but they have inspired me in their very own way. There are people that are guests and watching this that are friends and colleagues and family, and I'm glad that they're here. It helps me to keep pushing, and it helps me to continue doing the work that I'm doing because they're here cheering me on. But I also want to say that this work isn't easy, but it's also very, very, very inspiring, and it's also very rewarding. And if anything here tonight inspired you, and I hope it did, that I hope you do go for it and know that the work that's being done in schools, in public schools, and in community colleges, it's very good, rewarding work, and go for it. That's all I have to say. I know I'm very happy that I did it, and I'm very happy to be doing the work that I'm doing. And I'm sure that if anyone here loves it, or wants to do it after this, you're gonna love it too.
That's a great note to end on. And to thank you all panelists, Michael, Ashley, Samantha, Kirsten, Ivana, for really being such powerful speakers and such great examples of the kinds of connections and learning together that happens at the community, at our community colleges, right? And for bringing that love and for bringing that power too. You all really brought it. Like, this was the easiest panel I've had to moderate, and that Elise had to prep. You all really came with it. It was beautiful, and just shows the what's the word I'm looking for? The motivation that exists. There's a better word for it, but it's leaving me now. So thank you all. Thank you to participants who joined us this evening. Some of you, if you're teachers, you're on vacation and you came through, that's great. Woo-hoo! Thank you to Wendy and Christine and Matt at Urban Ed, and for everyone who is creating and sustaining communities of sorry, Elisa and I try and write things down because I get nervous a lot, of radical love and learning wherever you are. So thank you to everyone. A quick plug, look out for our upcoming event, March 2nd at 7 p.m., Reclaiming Our Power, a practice of queering the classroom, school, and community, breaking binaries again and again. And we renamed it to Reclaiming because, as some of you know, on December 15th, 2020, the urban ed community was violently Zoom bombed just after one of our panelists began speaking. And about half of the 50 plus participants managed to regather in a Zoom room and decided to reclaim our power by rescheduling the conversation and inviting everyone we know. So as you are getting the invites, please share them with people that you know. We are gonna have that conversation. We are gonna make it secure, and we're not gonna let them shut us down. So please look out for that. And then our other conversations in the following weeks and months. Last but not least, if you have donated, please continue to donate. If you have not donated to the Racial Justice Student Fund, it is there to support students like our future to be Ivana and Kirsten and Samantha's and Michael's, etc., in the Urban Ed program, who we hope will go out and work with in community colleges and other community college students in the future. So please donate. As I had shared before, every dollar donated to the Racial Justice Student Fund isn't just a dollar that you're giving, but it's also a vote that you're giving for the Urban Ed program to let people know that you care, that the Urban Ed program is important, because we do put scholars out in community colleges, in other community colleges, in other colleges and communities that are servicing not just, the ivory tower audience, but people on the ground. So please keep that in mind. Elisa should be putting links in the chat. I can't see my chat right now because I'm looking at my notes. But once again, thank you so much. Please do donate. And we hope to see you again in our next panel discussion. And again, panelists, so inspiring.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
just gonna say.
And
Also,
Elisa, go for it.
no, I was just gonna say, can we all just one more, like, if everybody wants to unmute for a second and just cheer, clap, like, woo, 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 woo.
Woo! For our amazing panelists, yes. Thank you.
Fabulous. Yeah. Thank you.
You
Thank
all.
you, Lisette, for moderating. As
Thank you,
always.
Elisa, for being the brainchild. And thank you to
And
everyone.
you all were fabulous. Seriously, I'm not joking. Roadshow. Boom. So.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Be well. Be safe.
Yes, good
Hi,
night.
everybody. Thanks.